Well, there's been a great deal of distortion in the vast majority of newspaper accounts, television accounts, press in general. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I didn't rush to answer all of the requests that have come in for TV interviews and radio interviews and newspaper interviews. I felt that, however, that appearing on Black Journal was something that was extremely important, because I know that you are interested in serving the needs and interests of Black people. And therefore, I decided to do this one because I feel that this is a chance for me to express my gratitude and appreciation to all of my sisters and brothers who've worked so hard and so long in the struggle to free me. Well, there have been all kinds of activities over the last 22 months, but perhaps I can give one very concrete example of the way in which the involvement of large masses of people, and particularly Black people, had a direct impact on the case itself. A couple of months ago, there was a decision from the California Supreme Court abolishing the death penalty. That meant at that time that we were able to make a motion for bail. There were felony defendants all over the state of California who also made motions for bail. Right after the decision came down, letters and telegrams and telephone calls and petitions and all kinds of things came in from all over the country and all over the world. The judge could release me on bail knowing that there existed a climate of public opinion which would agree with that, and he wouldn't feel isolated. Well, certainly the months I spent in jail, the majority of which was spent in solitary confinement, weren't a very happy experience at all. So many of my sisters and brothers are right now suffering under conditions that are far worse than those that I had to put up while I was in prison. My overall feeling about the acquittal is that the victory around my case means that there can be more victories. And all of the people, all of the sisters and brothers who came together in an organized fashion in order to demand my freedom can see now that it's possible to free more political prisoners and to do something about the oppression which has enslaved Black people in this country for so long. Well, there are a number of ways in which I would describe what a political prisoner is. Of course, we all recognize that the United States does not recognize the existence of political prisoners. And in fact, in general, when you talk about a person who is arrested for political reasons, you're talking about the use of criminal charges in order to stifle leadership, in order to isolate leaders and activists from the community. There is that kind of political prisoner. We know about Bobby Seale and Erica Huggins and Huey Newton and Leotis Johnson, and I could go on and on and on. The list is endless. The Soledad brothers. We know that they were arrested on criminal charges as an excuse for removing them from the community, removing them from their revolutionary work and activity among the people. There has come into being another kind of political prisoner. And I'm talking about all of the sisters and brothers who are victims of the system, who are easy targets of the police, who get railroaded through the courts into prison, often for no reason at all, who are there only because they're Black. And I think a brother during the Attica Rebellion sort of expressed this whole thing when he was asked by a reporter what he was charged with. And he said he was charged with being black. That's why he was there. And coupled with the oppression that leads black people and brown people, people of color, into the jails and prisons of this country, has been a new kind of political awareness that has spread all over the jails and prisons throughout the country. When George Jackson, and Fleeta Drumgo, and John Clouchet, and Ruchell McGee, I could go on and on to name the sisters and brothers who have achieved a political awareness and a political commitment behind the walls. But you see, once they do this, then they are subjected to all of the terror that the prison system has to offer. Mm-hmm. And so they end up spending years and years and years in prison under the worst of circumstances. Well, first of all, I think that black people, particularly black youth and brown youth, are beginning to see through the lies and distortions of the government and are beginning to see that much of what has been said about communism in this country is simply not true. The reason I am a communist is because I feel that only through a total revolution, which is going to overthrow the capitalist control of the economy, which will seize the wealth from all of the giant corporations that exploit and control the lives of all working people, but particularly black people. And see, I feel that the reason why racism is so blatant and has been a part of the history of black people from the time we were first kidnapped from the shores of Africa is because it has helped those capitalists gain more and more profit. And if you look at any factory, any plant, who does the worst jobs? Who gets paid the smallest salaries? It's black people. So racism serves as a buttress, as a justification for super exploitation. There's been a lot of confusion, even in the movement, even among sisters and brothers who were fighting for liberation, about what communism is all about. People have talked about black people being used by communists. And as a communist in this country, I see that the greatest revolutionary potential exists among black and brown people. When I talk about a communist revolution, I'm talking about a revolution which encompasses the vast majority of people in this country who are working people, but a revolution which is led by people of color, working people of color. The two are inextricably combined. As I said before, racism, in terms of its material base, means super exploitation economically. It means that black people get the worst of the entire lot economically. It also means that the capitalist, the boss, is able to divide black workers from white workers. Why? Because he tells the white worker that his problem is not those who control his lives, those who take his labor and turn it into profit for themselves, but his problem is the black man who's trying to get his job. And so racism is operated as a divisive force to prevent the emergence of a real revolution in this country. Well, it depends on what you mean by black nationalism. Of course, I would never equate the oppression of black people in this country with the exploitation of white people. I think that there is an essential difference, and there is a national aspect of our struggle as black people, and we have to maintain that cohesiveness and that unity among ourselves in order to be effective in a broader revolution. I would say also that for white people, for white workers, the most important thing they have to do now is combat racism, so that racism and the fight against racism becomes the key to a broad revolution embracing all people in this country, all working people. Well, I mean, that depends really on those who wield the power. If it were possible to have a peaceful revolution, and when I say revolution, I'm talking about a complete and total change in the entire fabric of this society, a change in the distribution of wealth. We have to seize all of the wealth from the General Motors and from the Fords and from all of the giant corporations that control the destiny of this country today. But we also have to revamp the educational system. We have to revamp all of the political institutions. If those who are in power now would simply accept the demands of the revolution, then there would be no necessity for violence. If there is violence in the process of waging a revolution, that will be determined by the ruling class. That will be determined by those who hold the power. Now see, let me just give you a small sort of a microcosmic example of what I mean. Say a group of people get together and go out and demonstrate in order to dramatize their demands around a particular issue. You know, that's fine if they are able to do this in the way in which they want to. But what happens in many cases, you have police forces unleashed on them because they are peacefully demonstrated. And my position is that we do not stand there and allow ourselves to be shot down and beaten. We have the right, we have the human right to defend ourselves and to defend our principles and defend what we want to do. And so I would say that in the event of violence in a revolution, you always have to see that in the context of defending gains of the people. We have a right to defend those gains. The electoral process is something that should be utilized. It's not something that should be seen as the solution, because I don't think that simply by changing the faces and changing the figures in the government, there's going to be any kind of fundamental change. When we talk about a revolution, we're talking about a fundamental change in the system, a complete and total overthrowing and transformation of the system. I feel that the electoral process is significant in the sense that it serves to measure the level of consciousness which black people and people of color and white people as well have achieved. Take someone like Ron Dellums. The fact that Ron Dellums was elected to Congress said something about the collective mood of the people in his area. And precisely because it said something about their collective mood, he cannot forget that he has a responsibility to make known the needs and the interests and whatever his contingency feels are the important issues of the day. You know, I suppose they must feel that we are totally unsophisticated. At first, I really found it incredible that they could do this again. They did it after the acquittal of the New York 21. They did it after Bobby and Erica, and now they're doing it again. But see, it seems to me that the very fact that they're so quick to jump up and say, here's another acquittal, it now demonstrates conclusively that there's nothing wrong with the American system of justice. if they weren't aware of all of the problems in the judicial system, of the way in which it has been historically used and continues to be used as a weapon of oppression against black people, they wouldn't be so defensive about the whole thing. How can you say that this demonstrates that there is justice in the American courts when we know that the jails and prisons across the country are filled to the brim with black and brown people? We know that on death row right now, the vast majority of the prisoners who are going to be executed are people of color. We know that when a black person is picked up from the community and brought to jail, he's going to have to depend on a public defender, because more than likely he won't be able to hire a good lawyer. And this public defender, what is he going to do? He's going to tell him to cop a plea, even though he knows in many cases that his client is just as innocent as he is. See, this whole victory, it's not my victory. It's our victory. It's a victory of all those who struggled. And so what I'm going to try to do now is to build the very same kind of movement that was built around me, and the kind of movement that liberated me from prison, in order to free more of our brothers and sisters, because that's the real significance of this victory. Well, I have been told that such an invitation is forthcoming, and I really haven't made any definite plans about that. However, I would say that no matter how tempted I might feel as an individual to go to another country where life is more beautiful, in a country which doesn't have all of the oppression and all of the misery that we see here, I feel a very special kind of responsibility to stay here and help to build a movement that's going to bring about some change for my people in this country. I did receive an invitation to visit the Soviet Union. I don't know where the rumor that I was going to Bulgaria stemmed from, but as I said before, I'm planning for the time being to remain in this country and help to do some of the work to build the kind of movement that we're talking about. Of course, sometime in the future, I probably will spend some time abroad, because I feel that I have to also express my appreciation and gratitude to all of the millions of people in Africa and in Europe and in the socialist countries. When I was in jail both in Marin County and Palo Alto, I'd get each day letters from the socialist countries, and they waged a really tremendous campaign. Cuba, they had a committee there, and they just went all out in my defense. And expressing my gratitude to the people in countries abroad, I also have the responsibility to help maintain the momentum of the movement that was forged around me, so that we can also break some more chains and tear down some more walls. Well, of course, as I love all my people, I also love George Jackson. But then I had a special kind of relationship with George as a result of working on his defense on the outside and getting to know him as a person. And then once I was arrested, becoming closer to him because of the similarity of our conditions. The prosecution's theory of the case, of course, was that I was ruled by a passionate love for George. And my response to that was very simple. And I think a lot of it had to do with the male supremacist notions and ideas. He felt that because I was a woman, he was going to be able to pull this off. I mean, I was just completely floored when I heard that, because what he was really saying was that to love someone is a crime. Yeah, that I would have absolutely no ability to be rational and to make decisions of my own. Well, of course, the last 2 years have been a very difficult time for my parents, particularly because they live in the South and because of all of the pressures that they've had to withstand. But they've really been beautiful, extremely beautiful, because instead of succumbing to all of these pressures, they became stronger. And my entire family was involved in the defense. My mother spent a great deal of time speaking across the country, as did my sister and my brother. And I think that out of this, this whole ordeal, there has developed an even greater solidarity among us, but it's a solidarity which is developed through struggle. That's the most important thing.